Hey everyone, welcome back to Moveless History, where we dive deep into the daily realities of the past, often debunking those delightful but wildly inaccurate images history sometimes throws our way. Tonight, we're tackling something universally beloved: food, specifically medieval food. Close your eyes and picture it: a grand feast. A long table groaning under the weight of roasted boars, whole swans, enormous golden goblets, and of course that ubiquitous giant turkey leg clutched by a laughing knight. It's the image of medieval dining embedded in our collective consciousness, isn't it? Well, gather round, because like most historical stereotypes, the reality of medieval meals was vastly different, far more complex, and frankly, a whole lot less like a Renaissance fair and a whole lot more like a constant, sometimes desperate, negotiation with nature and class. So, before you grab that next imaginary turkey leg, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to Moveless History if you genuinely love uncovering the gritty truth behind the historical glamour. And in the comments below, tell us what modern food you absolutely could not live without if you were suddenly transported to the Middle Ages. Now, dim the lights, maybe light a candle for that authentic medieval ambiance and to mask any unpleasant smells, and let's set the table for a truly revealing meal. The first undeniable truth about medieval meals is this: for the vast majority of people, life revolved around grains. Not meat, not fancy desserts, but grains. Think bread, porridge, gruel, and more bread. For the millions of peasants who tilled the land across Europe, their diet was fundamentally agrarian. Wheat, rye, barley, and oats were the cornerstones of existence. Bread, often a dense, dark, whole-grain loaf, was the primary source of calories and sustenance consumed at every single meal. It was often coarse, sometimes gritty from imperfect milling, and certainly nothing like the fluffy white loaves we crave today. Alongside bread, various forms of pottage or gruel, a thick stew made from grains, peas, beans, and whatever vegetables were available and in season, formed the backbone of the diet. This was often cooked in a single pot, simmering over an open fire all day, with new ingredients added as they became available. It was nutritious, filling, and relatively cheap to produce. Meat, for the common peasant, was a rare luxury, not a daily staple. If you were lucky, you might have some bacon from a pig you raised, or perhaps a tough piece of salted beef. Wild game was largely the preserve of the nobility, and poaching on their lands carried severe, often brutal, penalties. So, no, the average medieval person wasn't gnawing on a deer leg for lunch. Chickens and eggs provided some protein, as did dairy products like milk, cheese, and butter, but these were often seasonal and perishable. Fish was eaten more widely, especially on the numerous fast days mandated by the church, which could be up to half the year, when meat, eggs, and dairy were forbidden. Freshwater fish from local rivers and ponds, or salted herring imported from the coast, became crucial dietary components during Lent and other religious observances. Now, let's climb the social ladder. As you ascended from peasant to artisan in a bustling town, your diet saw some improvements, mainly in variety and accessibility. Town dwellers had access to bustling markets where a wider array of goods, even some imported items, could be purchased, if you had the coin. Your bread might still be dark, but perhaps a bit finer. You might afford more cheese, some cured meats, and a wider range of vegetables and fruits. Artisans and skilled laborers would still rely heavily on grain-based foods, but their greater income allowed for more consistent access to protein, like cheaper cuts of meat or more fish. Ale and beer, brewed locally, remained the staple beverage consumed by virtually everyone, often from dawn till dusk. Why? Because water sources were often contaminated and unsafe to drink directly. The fermentation process made ale a much safer, albeit low-alcohol, alternative. Then we reach the opulent, often excessive, world of the nobility and royalty. This is where those images of grand feasts truly come into play. The tables of lords, ladies, and kings groaned, not under necessity, but under abundance and display. For the aristocracy, meat was central to almost every meal. Roasted venison, wild boar, rabbit, various fowl, though remember, no turkey. And domesticated meats like beef, pork, and mutton were consumed in vast quantities. The more exotic the animal, the greater the display of wealth and power. Peacocks, swans, and even porpoises. Yes, porpoises were considered fish and eaten on fast days. might adorn a noble's table, often roasted and then redressed in their own feathers or skin to make a grand visual statement. Spices imported from the distant East were incredibly valuable and served as a potent status symbol. Black pepper, ginger, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, and saffron were used not just for flavor, but often in quantities that would overwhelm a modern palate. While there's a persistent myth that spices were used to mask the taste of spoiled meat, the truth is more nuanced. Spices were expensive. No one was wasting them on rotten food. Instead, they were used to create complex flavor profiles, to demonstrate wealth, and to aid in digestion, or so it was believed. The wealthy also enjoyed finer, whiter bread made from sifted wheat flour, a stark contrast to the coarse peasant loaves. They had access to a wider variety of fruits, nuts, and vegetables, often grown in their own gardens or purchased from specialized vendors. Wine, not ale, was the beverage of choice for the nobility, ranging from local vintages to highly prized imported varieties. Now, let's clear up some major medieval food myths. Firstly, the aforementioned turkey leg. Turkeys are native to the Americas. They simply did not exist in Europe until after Columbus's voyages in the late 15th century, and even then took time to become commonplace. So, no medieval knight ever gnawed on a turkey leg. If they were eating a large bird, it was likely goose, duck, or swan. Secondly, potatoes and tomatoes. Again, these are New World crops. They were unknown in medieval Europe. The stews and pottages were based on root vegetables like carrots, often purple or white, not orange, parsnips, turnips, and onions, along with various legumes. Thirdly, forks. While rudimentary forks existed in some parts of the Byzantine Empire and were occasionally seen in Italy, they were not widely adopted in medieval Europe until much later, primarily during the Renaissance. Most people ate with spoons, knives, or most commonly, their hands. Table manners were far less refined, involving communal dishes and direct hand-to-mouth eating. Cooking in the Middle Ages was a far cry from our modern kitchens. The hearth, an open fire in the center of a dwelling or within a dedicated kitchen space, was the heart of all culinary activity. Large cauldrons hung over the flames used for simmering pottages, boiling meats, and making ale. Spits were used for roasting meats over the open fire. Bread was often baked in communal ovens or in smaller, domed ovens built into wealthier homes. The lack of refrigeration meant that preservation was paramount. Salting, smoking, drying, and pickling were essential techniques to extend the shelf life of perishable foods. Meat was heavily salted, fish dried, and vegetables pickled in brine or vinegar. This meant much of the diet was high in salt, contributing to various health issues. The role of women in food preparation was central and often backbreaking. From grinding grain, unless a local mill was available, to tending the fire, preparing ingredients, and cooking for the entire household, it was an endless cycle of labor. In larger noble households, specialized kitchen staff, often male, managed the complex preparations for banquets, but even there, the sheer volume of work was immense. Monasteries, too, played a significant role in medieval cuisine. Monks often maintained extensive gardens, developed new agricultural techniques, and refined brewing and winemaking processes. Many monastic orders had specific dietary rules, leading to the development of sophisticated vegetarian and fish-based dishes that influenced broader culinary trends. As for drinks, ale and beer were more than just beverages. They were a liquid food source and a crucial means of hydration. The low alcohol content meant they could be drunk throughout the day, even by children. Water from wells or rivers was often contaminated with bacteria and parasites, making it risky to drink raw. Boiling water for cooking helped, but fermented drinks offered a safer alternative. Wine was more common in southern Europe, where grapes could be cultivated, and was often diluted with water. Cider was popular in regions with abundant apple orchards. Milk was consumed fresh, but also quickly turned into cheese or butter for preservation. Finally, dining etiquette in the Middle Ages would appear rather barbaric to us today. Forget linen napkins and individual place settings. Meals, especially for the common folk, were typically communal. Everyone ate from shared trenchers, stale pieces of bread that served as edible plates, absorbing juices, and then often given to the poor or dogs, or from shared bowls. Fingers were the primary utensils, though knives were used for cutting meat and spoons for pottage. It was a loud, boisterous, and often messy affair. Conversation was lively, and burping or spitting was not considered particularly rude. Even at noble feasts, while there might be more ornate serving dishes in the presence of carving knives, The overall atmosphere was one of uninhibited consumption rather than polite, quiet dining. The concept of individual portions and refined table manners evolved much later. So, the next time you encounter that mythical medieval turkey leg, remember the truth. A world of dense, dark bread, simmering pottage, heavily salted fish, and a relentless quest for calories. Medieval meals were a diverse landscape, shaped by class, geography, and the constant struggle against famine and spoilage. It wasn't always glamorous, rarely convenient, but it was undeniably the fuel that sustained a civilization. It reminds us that every bite of food has a history, and sometimes that history is far more fascinating and real than the fairy tales we've been told. Thanks for joining Moveless History as we continue to peel back the layers of the past, one surprising meal at a time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own hunger for historical truth in the comments below. We'll see you next time.